Most people think of identity theft as a stranger in a basement halfway across the world. For me, it was my own brother, the golden child, standing in our parents' kitchen with a pen and a lie. I was standing in my parents' driveway on a random Tuesday when I opened an envelope from the county recorder's office. It said their home, the house they'd lived in for 43 years, had been sold for $475,000.
My name is Anne, and I'm 52 years old. For the past 3 years, I've been living just 10 minutes away from my parents' house, the same house where I grew up, where my brother David and I used to race down the hallway in our socks, where Mom taught me to make her famous pot roast every Sunday. It's a modest ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it's theirs. Or at least I thought it was. That morning started like any other. I'd stopped by to take Mom to her doctor's appointment. Dad's Parkinson's had gotten worse over the past year, and Mom, at 78, was showing signs of memory issues herself. Nothing dramatic. She'd forget where she put her reading glasses, or she'd tell me the same story twice in one conversation. The doctors called it mild cognitive impairment. I called it terrifying. David, my older brother, had always been the golden child. Charismatic, confident, always landing on his feet no matter what mess he created. He lived in Arizona now, managing some kind of investment firm. At least that's what he told us. We didn't see him much, maybe twice a year if we were lucky. But he called Mom every week, always at the same time, always making her laugh with his stories. I was the one who showed up. I was the one who drove them to appointments, organized their medications, made sure they ate properly. I was the one who noticed when Dad's hand tremors got worse, or when Mom forgot to turn off the stove. I didn't mind. They were my parents. This is what you do. But that Tuesday, something felt off. I'd pulled into their driveway at 9:30, like always. The mail truck was just leaving, and the mailbox was stuffed full. That was the first strange thing. My parents usually got their mail by 8 in the morning. Dad used to joke that waiting for the mailman was his favorite part of retirement. I gathered up the stack of envelopes and magazines, sorting through them as I walked to the front door. Bills, catalogs, a letter from their insurance company. And then I saw it, that envelope from the county recorder's office. It was addressed to current residents, which seemed odd. My parents had lived here for 43 years. They weren't exactly current residents. They were practically part of the foundation. I should have just brought it inside with the rest of the mail, but something made me pause. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the weeks of strange little things I'd been noticing and pushing aside. The way Mom had mentioned David asking her to sign some papers last month when he visited. The way she couldn't quite remember what they were for. The way David had been even harder to reach than usual lately. I opened the envelope. It was a property deed transfer notification. My parents' house had been sold 3 weeks ago to someone named Martinez Holdings, LLC, for $475,000. My hands started shaking. This had to be a mistake, some clerical error at the county office. My parents hadn't mentioned anything about selling their house. They would have told me. They wouldn't just sell their home of 4 decades without saying a word. I rang the doorbell, still clutching that piece of paper, trying to control my breathing. Mom answered with her usual warm smile, wearing her favorite purple cardigan. "Anne, honey, you're early," she said, glancing at her watch. "I thought the appointment was at 10:30. "It is, Mom. I'm right on time." I followed her inside, where Dad was sitting in his recliner watching the morning news. "Mom, Dad, I need to ask you something. Did you sell the house?" Mom looked confused. "Sell the house? No, dear, of course not. Why would we sell the house?" I held up the notice. Because, according to this, the house was sold 3 weeks ago. Dad's head turned slowly from the television. His expression shifted from confusion to something else. Fear, maybe, or recognition. "Let me see that," he said, his voice quiet. I handed him the paper, watching his face as he read. His hands were trembling more than usual, but I couldn't tell if it was the Parkinson's or something else. "This must be a mistake," Mom said, peering over his shoulder. "We didn't sell anything. Did we, Harold?" But Dad wasn't answering. He was staring at the paper, his jaw working like he was trying to form words that wouldn't come.
"Dad?" I knelt beside his chair. "Do you know something about this?" He closed his eyes. "David was here last month. He brought some papers. He said it was for our estate planning. Power of attorney documents, he said. So we wouldn't have to worry about things if we got sick." My stomach dropped. "What kind of power of attorney?" "He said it was just a precaution," Dad continued, his voice getting smaller. "He's always been so good with legal things, so smart about money. He said he was just trying to protect us." "Did you sign them?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We both did," Mom said, her confusion giving way to worry. "Anne, what's wrong? What did we do?" I spent the next hour on the phone, first with the county recorder's office, who confirmed that yes, the property had been transferred to Martinez Holdings LLC, using a power of attorney document signed by my parents. Then with an attorney friend, who explained in terms that made my blood run cold, that if David had obtained a legitimate power of attorney, he could legally sell their house without their presence at the closing. But they didn't agree to sell it, I told her. They didn't even know it was happening. "That's financial abuse," she said. "Probably fraud. But Anne, if they signed the power of attorney, and if he had it notarized, proving that he used it fraudulently is going to be complicated. You need to report this to the police immediately, and you need to find out where that money went." I tried calling David 17 times that day. Every call went straight to voicemail. I left messages that grew increasingly frantic, then angry, then coldly professional. "David, this is Anne. I know what you did. Call me back immediately." Nothing. That evening, I sat with my parents at their kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, and tried to explain what had happened. Mom kept shaking her head, refusing to believe it. "David wouldn't do this. He loves us. He's our son." Dad was quieter, his face gray. "I trusted him," he said finally. "I thought he was helping us." I filed a police report that night. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but not optimistic. "Financial exploitation of the elderly is more common than you'd think," he said, "and it's usually family members. The problem is, if they signed that power of attorney willingly, even if they didn't understand what it would be used for, it's going to be hard to prosecute. We'll investigate, but you should probably get a lawyer." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through memories. David at Christmas 3 years ago, making a big show of bringing expensive gifts. David last summer, mentioning casually that his business was going through a temporary rough patch. David on the phone with Mom, always so charming, always making promises about visiting more often. The breadcrumbs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. The next morning, I started digging. I called the title company that had handled the sale. After some persuasion and thinly veiled threats about being complicit in elder fraud, they confirmed that the sale had closed 3 weeks ago. The funds, minus their fees, had been wired to an account under David's name at a bank in Arizona. $475,000. My parents' entire equity, built up over 43 years of mortgage payments and memories, transferred into my brother's account in a single afternoon. But here's what really made my stomach turn. When I finally got through to someone at David's supposed investment firm in Arizona, they'd never heard of him. The business address he'd been using for the past 5 years? A UPS store mailbox. My brother, the successful financial advisor, didn't exist.
Over the next few days, I learned more than I ever wanted to know about my brother's real life. The investment firm was a fiction. He'd been working odd jobs, living in a cheap apartment, drowning in debt from a failed business venture 3 years ago. The expensive gifts, the smooth talk about his success, all of it was a carefully constructed lie. And apparently, I wasn't his first victim. I discovered through some digging on social media and a few awkward phone calls that David had borrowed money from our uncle 2 years ago, $20,000, and never paid it back. He'd convinced our cousin to co-sign on a car loan that he'd defaulted on. There was a trail of small-scale cons and broken promises, people who cared about him and believed his stories until they learned the hard way not to. But this was different. This wasn't borrowing money he never intended to repay. This was stealing everything my parents had. I thought the $475,000 was the end of it. I didn't realize it was just the beginning of how much my brother had actually stolen. On Friday, I got a call from my parents' bank. There had been unusual activity on their savings account, withdrawals totaling $63,000 over the past 6 weeks. I drove to the bank immediately with Dad's permission to access his accounts. The manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd known my parents for 20 years, looked genuinely distressed as she pulled up the transaction history. These were all made with proper authorization, she explained. Someone came in with power of attorney documentation. We verified it. The signatures matched our records. Let me guess, I said, feeling numb. My brother? She nodded slowly. I'm so sorry. If we'd known. But how could they have known? David had done everything right, legally speaking. He'd had documents notarized. He'd followed procedures. He'd stolen over $500,000 from our parents, using the legal system as his weapon. That evening, I sat down with Mom and Dad again. Dad was crying, the first time I'd seen him cry since his own father's funeral 15 years ago. Mom just looked confused, asking the same questions over and over. Why would David do this? Where is he? Why won't he call us back? I wanted to have answers. I wanted to tell them that there was some reasonable explanation, some misunderstanding that could be cleared up. But I couldn't, because the truth was becoming increasingly clear. David had planned this for months, maybe years. He'd been setting up the pieces, building trust, waiting for the right moment, when Mom's memory was just foggy enough, when Dad was just sick enough, when they'd be vulnerable enough to sign whatever he put in front of them. And now he was gone. The police investigation crawled forward at a pace that made me want to scream. Yes, they were looking into it. Yes, they'd filed reports. Yes, they'd attempted to contact David. But unless he returned to the state voluntarily, there wasn't much they could do immediately. Interstate fraud cases took time. Time is something we don't have, I wanted to shout at them. My parents were in their late 70s. Mom's memory issues weren't going to get better. Dad's Parkinson's was progressive. And now they were facing the very real possibility of losing their home, even though they didn't fully understand what had happened. Because here's the thing about the power of attorney sale. It was legal. Horrifyingly, sickeningly legal. Martinez Holdings LLC was a legitimate company that had purchased the property in good faith. They had no obligation to return it. The house was gone. I hired an attorney, a sharp woman in her 60s named Margaret, who specialized in elder law. Her retainer alone was $5,000. Money I didn't really have, but what choice did I have? She reviewed all the documents, took detailed statements from my parents, and gave me the news I'd been dreading.
This is prosecutable as financial exploitation, Margaret explained. Your brother absolutely committed a crime, but recovering the assets is going to be extremely difficult. The house sale was technically legal. Your parents did sign that power of attorney. The question is whether they understood what they were signing and whether your brother misrepresented its purpose. He told them it was for estate planning, I said. They had no idea he was going to sell their house. I believe you, but proving that in court, especially with your mother's memory issues, is going to be challenging. And even if we win a judgment against your brother, if he's hidden or spent the money, we may never recover it. I felt like I was drowning. Every door I tried to open led to another locked door. Every person I called for help gave me sympathy and limitations. That weekend, I moved into my parents' house. I couldn't let them stay there alone, not knowing that technically they didn't own it anymore, not knowing what Martina's holdings might do, not knowing if David might try something else. My husband understood, though I could see the strain it was putting on our marriage. I'll handle things at home, he said. You take care of them. Sunday evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, that same instinct that had made me open that envelope from the county, made me pick up. Anne. It was David's voice, and it made my entire body go rigid. Where are you? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Somewhere safe. Listen, I don't have much time. You stole their house, David. You stole everything they have. Where's the money? There was a pause. I needed it, Anne. You don't understand. I was in debt. Bad debt. These people were going to... I didn't have a choice. You didn't have a choice? I was shaking now, rage replacing the numbness. You absolutely had a choice. You could have asked for help. You could have filed for bankruptcy. You could have done literally anything except steal from our parents. They weren't using the equity, he said, and I could hear him trying to justify it, trying to convince himself. They were just sitting on it. I was going to pay them back once I got back on my feet. I was going to buy them a nice place, somewhere easier for them to manage. Don't you dare, my voice came out as a hiss. Don't you dare try to pretend this was for them. You stole their home. They have nowhere to go. Mom doesn't even understand what's happening. Dad cried for the first time in 15 years because his own son betrayed him. You destroyed them, David, for money. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm leaving the country tomorrow. I just wanted to, I don't know, say goodbye, I guess? My heart was pounding. If you get on that plane, you're never coming back. You know that, right? You'll never see them again. You'll never be able to make this right. There's no making this right, he said quietly. I know that. I just... Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them yourself, you coward. The line went dead. I stood there in my parents' kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, and something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped into place, like a switch flipping from despair to determination. David thought he'd won. He thought he'd gotten away with it. He was wrong. I called Margaret immediately, despite it being Sunday evening. He's leaving the country tomorrow. What can we do? Where is he now? She asked. I don't know. The number was blocked. If we can locate him,
We might be able to get an emergency restraining order or freeze his assets. But Anne, that's a long shot. We'd need to know exactly where he is. I hung up and started thinking. David had called me from an unknown number, but he'd said he was leaving tomorrow. That meant he was likely near an airport, a major airport for an international flight. Phoenix Sky Harbor, probably, his closest major airport. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. I sat down at my parents' computer and started searching. David's social media accounts had been quiet for weeks, but I checked anyway. Nothing. I tried searching for Martinez Holdings LLC, the company that had bought the house. The registered agent was a lawyer in Phoenix, which told me nothing useful. Then I remembered something. 3 years ago, at Christmas, David had mentioned joining some online forum for entrepreneurs. He'd been bragging about networking with serious business people. At the time, I tuned it out. David was always bragging about something. But now I wondered if he'd left any digital footprints there. It took me an hour of searching, but I found it. A forum post from 2 months ago, username David K. Investments, asking for advice about relocating business operations internationally and whether anyone had experience with Portuguese golden visas. Portugal. He was going to Portugal. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Margaret and the police. He's planning to leave tomorrow, probably from Phoenix, heading to Portugal. Can we stop him? Margaret called me back within 20 minutes. I've contacted the district attorney's office. They're going to try to issue a warrant, but these things take time. The best chance we have is if we can locate him before he gets on that plane. How do I do that? You don't, she said firmly. You let law enforcement handle this. But I couldn't just wait. Not when David was hours away from disappearing forever with my parents' life savings. I made a decision that I'm still not sure was smart or crazy. Maybe both. I booked a flight to Phoenix, leaving at 6 the next morning. I didn't tell my husband the full plan, just that I had to go, that I'd explain later. I asked my neighbor to check in on my parents. And then I drove to the airport in the pre-dawn darkness, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do when I got to Phoenix. I thought tracking down my brother in a major airport would be impossible. I didn't realize that sometimes, if you know someone well enough, you know exactly where they'll make their mistakes. I landed in Phoenix at 9:30 Monday morning. I had no idea which airline David was flying, what time his flight left, or even for certain that he was leaving from this airport. All I had was a hunch and a desperate need to stop him. The Phoenix airport is enormous. 3 terminals, dozens of gates, thousands of people. Finding one person there should have been impossible, but I had one advantage. I knew David. My brother has always been a creature of habit, despite his chaotic lifestyle. When we were kids, he ate the same breakfast every day. 2 scrambled eggs, wheat toast, orange juice. As an adult, whenever he flew, he always arrived exactly 2 hours early, always checked one bag, always stopped at the airport bar for 1 beer before boarding. Always. I positioned myself near the main security checkpoint, watching. I'd sent pictures of David to Margaret, to the police, to the airport authorities, but I knew the system. Even with a warrant being processed, even with everyone looking for him, bureaucracy moved slowly. I couldn't count on official channels. I had to find him myself. 3 hours passed. My legs ached from standing. I'd called Margaret twice for updates. The warrant's been approved, she told me on the second call. Airport police have been notified. But Anne, you need to stay out of this. If you confront him, you could complicate everything. I understand, I said, not mentioning that I was already at the airport. At 1:15, I saw him.
He was walking through the terminal with a single rolling suitcase, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, trying to look casual. But I'd know that walk anywhere. The slight hitch in his left step from when he broke his ankle in high school, the way he always leaned slightly to the right. My brother, the person I'd grown up with, fought with, laughed with, the person who taught me to ride a bike, and who'd scared off my first boyfriend, the stranger who'd stolen everything from our parents. I followed him at a distance, keeping my phone out, texting Margaret updates. I see him, Terminal 4, Gate B17, international flights. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. David stopped at an airport bar, just like I'd predicted. He ordered a beer, checked his watch, pulled out his phone. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around constantly. Looking for me? For police? Or just the general paranoia of someone who knows he's running?
I stood about 50 feet away, partially hidden behind a magazine stand, watching him. Part of me wanted to march over there, to scream at him in front of everyone, to make a scene that would stop him from boarding that plane. But I knew that wouldn't help. I needed to be smart about this. Margaret texted back, "Airport police en route to that gate. Do not approach him. Let them handle it." I watched David finish his beer, check his watch again, and stand up. He was heading towards his gate, towards international departures, towards Portugal, towards a new life built on my parents' stolen money. I couldn't just stand there. I walked up to him just as he was showing his boarding pass at the gate entrance. "David." He turned, and I watched the color drain from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Around us, travelers bustled past, completely unaware of the confrontation happening in their midst. "Anne," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "you shouldn't be here. Neither should you." I kept my voice steady, though inside I was screaming. "You're not getting on that plane." He glanced toward the jet bridge, calculating. "You can't stop me. Actually, I can." I held up my phone, showing him the last text from Margaret. "There's a warrant for your arrest. Airport police are on their way right now." "It's over, David." His jaw tightened. "This is none of your business, Anne. This is between me and Mom and Dad." You made it my business when you stole their house, when you left them with nothing, when you destroyed them. I didn't destroy anyone, he snapped, his charming mask finally slipping. They're old, Anne. They don't need all that equity. They were never going to use it. I needed it. I was drowning. Do you have any idea what it's like to what? To be desperate? To need help? I stepped closer to him, my voice low and fierce. You're right, David. I don't know what that's like. Because when I'm desperate, when I need help, I ask for it. I don't steal from the people who love me. I don't destroy my own parents to save myself. You don't understand.
Then explain it to me. Behind him, I could see 2 uniformed officers approaching, but I didn't break eye contact. Explain to me how taking everything from our 78-year-old parents was your only option. Explain to me how you could look Mom in the eye, make her sign those papers, and then disappear while she asks me every single day why you won't call her back. His face crumpled then, just for a moment. I saw genuine anguish flash across his features. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just needed some money, and then I needed more, and then... God, Anne, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give them their house back, I said. Sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Sorry doesn't... Sir? One of the airport police officers had reached us. David Kenneth Morrison. David looked at me one more time, something desperate in his eyes.
"Tell them I'm sorry," he said quietly, echoing his words from the phone call the night before. "No," I said. "You're going to tell them yourself." The arrest was anticlimactic. David didn't resist, didn't make a scene. He just stood there, looking smaller somehow as they handcuffed him, as they read him his rights, as they led him away from that gate and toward a very different future than the one he'd been planning. I watched him go, and all I felt was exhausted. The legal aftermath took months. David was charged with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, theft by fraud, and several other crimes I didn't fully understand. He waived extradition and was brought back to face charges. The bail was set high enough that he couldn't pay it. Unsurprising, since most of the money he'd stolen was already spent. That was one of the hardest parts to accept. Of the $538,000 he'd taken from my parents, the house sale plus the savings account withdrawals, less than $200,000 remained. The rest had gone to pay off debts, make payments to loan sharks, fund 3 months of living expenses in Phoenix while he planned his escape. It was just gone. Margaret worked tirelessly to unwind the house sale. Martinez Holdings LLC, when they learned the full story, agreed to negotiate. They'd bought the property in good faith, but they didn't want to be part of elder fraud. After weeks of negotiation, they agreed to sell the house back to my parents for exactly what they'd paid for it. The problem was, my parents didn't have $475,000 anymore. David had spent most of it. I sat in Margaret's office on a gray November afternoon, trying to process the impossible math. So even if we get the criminal restitution, even if we recover every penny David hasn't spent, my parents can't afford to buy back their own house? Not outright, no, Margaret said gently. We could potentially work out a payment plan, or they could take out a reverse mortgage, or... She paused. Or we could sue David in civil court for damages beyond just the stolen amount. How long would that take? Years, potentially. And there's no guarantee we'd collect anything, especially if he ends up in prison. I drove home that night feeling defeated. We'd caught David. We'd stopped him from escaping. But we hadn't saved my parents' house. Not really. That evening, I got a call from my uncle, my father's brother. The same uncle David had borrowed $20,000 from years ago. "Anne, I heard about what happened. How are your folks doing?" I gave him the edited version, trying not to cry. "They're okay. Confused, mostly. Mom keeps asking when David's coming to visit." "And the house?" I explained the situation with Martinez Holdings, the impossible math, the years of legal battles ahead that might yield nothing. Uncle Jim was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to help." "Uncle Jim, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering. I have some savings. Not enough to buy the house outright, but maybe enough to bridge the gap. At least until you can sort out the legal stuff with David." I started crying then, right there on the phone. "He stole from you too. You don't owe us anything." "He's my nephew," Uncle Jim said quietly. "And they're my brother and sister-in-law. Family takes care of family, even when family messes up badly." Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. Uncle Jim told a few people what he was doing. Those people told others. My parents had lived in their community for over 40 years. They'd been good neighbors, good friends, active in their church. People remembered. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent a check. My parents' longtime neighbors organized a fundraiser. The church where Mom had volunteered in the food pantry for 2 decades took up a collection. Small amounts, mostly. $50 here, $100 there. But it added up. By Christmas, we had enough. Not from recovered funds, not from legal victories, but from the community my parents had been part of for most of their adult lives, from people who believed that what David did was wrong and that my parents deserved better. On December 23rd, we closed on the house. My parents bought back their own home, with help, with borrowed money that we'd spend years paying back, but they bought it back. When I brought them to the closing, Mom held Dad's trembling hand and cried. "We get to stay?" she asked me for the 10th time that day. "You get to stay," I confirmed. "This is your home. Always."
David's trial was scheduled for March. His public defender tried to work out a plea deal, but the prosecutor wasn't interested in going easy on him. Elder financial abuse cases are too common, she told me. We need to send a message. Part of me agreed. Part of me just felt sad. I went to visit David in jail twice before the trial. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to understand. Maybe I just needed to see if there was anything left of the brother I used to know. The first visit was tense. He was angry, defensive, blaming everyone but himself. If Mom hadn't been so careless with her memory, if Dad had read the documents more carefully, if you hadn't been so controlling. I let him talk himself out, and then I left without saying a word. The second visit was different. It was late February, and he'd been in jail for 4 months. He looked thinner, older, tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. "I've been thinking about Christmas," he said after we'd sat in silence for a few minutes. "Remember when we were kids, and I saved up all my allowance to buy Mom that necklace she wanted?" I remembered. He'd been 12, I'd been 8. He'd spent 3 months doing extra chores to afford a small silver necklace Mom had admired in a store window. She'd cried when she opened it on Christmas morning. "What happened to you, David?" I asked quietly. "When did you become someone who could do this to them?" He was quiet for a long time. "It wasn't one thing," he said finally. "It was a lot of little things, little compromises, little justifications. I'd tell myself it was just borrowing, or it was just bending the rules, or they'd understand if they knew the full story. And then one day I woke up and I was drowning in debt and lying to everyone, and I couldn't see a way out, except this. You could have asked for help." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know that now. But in the moment, all I could see was the shame, the failure, the proof that I wasn't the successful golden child everyone thought I was. I couldn't admit that, so I kept lying, and the lies got bigger. And then you stole their house." He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I thought I was so smart. I thought I'd planned it perfectly. I told myself it wasn't really stealing because I'd pay them back, because they didn't need all that equity, because I was family, so it was different. I had a whole list of reasons why it was okay. They all sounded so logical in my head. But it wasn't okay." "No," he said softly. "It wasn't." I left that visit feeling strange. Not forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that. Might never be ready. But maybe understanding. Not of what he did, but of how someone could become the kind of person who does it. The trial lasted 3 days. I sat through all of it, along with my parents. The prosecutor presented evidence, witnesses, documentation. Margaret testified about elder abuse indicators. A forensic accountant walked through the trail of money, showing exactly how David had systematically drained my parents' accounts. David's attorney tried to argue that my parents had given him permission, that the power of attorney was legitimate. But when Mom took the stand and described how confused she'd been, how David had rushed them through signing papers and told them it was just paperwork for estate planning, it was clear to everyone what had really happened. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts.
At sentencing, the judge was harsh. 7 years in prison, followed by 5 years probation. Full restitution ordered, though we all knew the money was mostly gone. The judge looked at David with something like contempt. "You didn't steal from strangers," she said. "You stole from the people who raised you, who loved you unconditionally. You exploited their trust and their vulnerability. You deserve every day of this sentence." I thought I'd feel triumphant when the sentence was announced. I thought I'd feel vindicated, satisfied, like justice had been served. Instead, I just felt hollow. Because yes, David was going to prison, but our parents had still lost years with their son. The money was still mostly gone. The trust was still shattered. We'd won, but it didn't feel like winning. That night, I sat with Mom and Dad in their living room, in their house that they still owned, that they'd fought to keep. Dad was asleep in his recliner. Mom was working on a crossword puzzle, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Anne," she said suddenly, looking up at me, "where's David? He hasn't called in so long." This was the hardest part. The doctor said Mom's memory issues meant she couldn't always retain new information. We'd explained what happened dozens of times, but sometimes she forgot. Sometimes she just knew her son was missing, without remembering why. "He's away right now, Mom," I said gently. "He made some mistakes. He's dealing with consequences." "Will he visit for Christmas?" "No, Mom, not this year." She nodded slowly, going back to her crossword. Then, without looking up, she said, "You're a good daughter, Anne. I hope you know that." I had to look away so she wouldn't see me crying. "I try, Mom." "You don't just try. You do." She reached over and patted my hand. "I know I don't always remember things correctly anymore, but I remember this. When things fell apart, you were here. You showed up. You fought for us. That matters more than you know." And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. Maybe that's what I learned from watching my brother destroy himself and nearly destroy our parents in the process. Showing up matters. Being there, even when it's hard, even when it's thankless, even when you're tired and frustrated and wish someone else would handle it, that's what makes the difference between family as a word and family as a reality. David chose the easy lies, the quick fix, the path that served himself first, and he lost everything that mattered: his freedom, his family, his self-respect. I chose to show up, to check the mail on a random Tuesday morning, to ask the uncomfortable questions, to fly to Phoenix on a hunch, to fight for my parents even when it seemed impossible. And because of that, they got to stay in their home. It's been 2 years since David's sentencing. Mom's memory issues have progressed. Dad's Parkinson's is worse. They need more help now. I've arranged for a part-time caretaker to come in most days. It's expensive, even with the small amount of restitution we've recovered from David's prison wages. But they're home, in their house, with their memories on every wall, their comfort in every room. David will be eligible for parole in 5 years. I don't know if I'll visit him again before then. I don't know if Mom will remember him when he gets out, or if Dad will want to see him. I don't know if there's a path to forgiveness, or if there should be. What I do know is this: when someone you love betrays you, when family becomes the source of your deepest pain, you have choices. You can walk away. You can give up. You can let the betrayal define you and destroy you. Or you can show up anyway, Now for them, for yourself, for the person you want to be, for the values you refuse to compromise. I showed up for my parents not because it was easy, but because it was right. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Show up. Fight for what matters. Protect the people who can't protect themselves, even when your brother is the one they need protection from. Even when the happy ending is really just a beginning, the start of a long road of rebuilding, recovering, and learning to trust again.
Even when you're tired and scared and not sure you're strong enough for what comes next, you show up anyway. Because that's what family means. Not the family that betrays you, but the family that stays. The family that fights. The family that, when everything falls apart, helps put the pieces back together. I'm that family for my parents now. And you know what? Despite everything, despite the heartbreak and the betrayal and the months of fighting, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because at the end of the day, I can look at myself in the mirror and know I did the right thing. And that's worth more than any amount of money my brother could have stolen. That's worth everything.